So this is a DrumWise Meet, and I'm here with Neal Wilkinson. Hi Neal.
Hey Tom, how's it going?
What equipment are you currently using? Now, obviously when I say currently, you know, if you were going out on tour right now, what gear would you be using?
Well, actually, the gear I would be taking out on tour would be the same one drum set actually that I use in the studio too. So at the moment, I'm a little light on equipment because I don't really have a backup of the same equipment. So and that's partly, well, it's all my fault because I haven't ordered the second set. But basically what I've been taking out is a Gretsch broadcaster with a 20x14 bass drum, which I've been using for about 2 years now. I haven't used another bass drum in that whole time for any sessions, any gigs, anything. Just the 20x14, it's an incredible drum. And then the toms I tend to change a bit, but generally something like with James, if I was going out on the road now, with James it would be the 20x14, 12x8, 14x14 and 16x16. Sometimes I'll lose one of those floor toms, maybe just the 12-14, 20 or 12-16, 20. And then a couple of years ago, I did get a 10. So if something calls for a few more toms, you know, I'll go back to my old sort of GAD kind of 10, 12, 14, 16 thing, you know. Yeah.
Excellent.
But the thing I find hard is the muscle memory goes, you know, especially if you're reading a chart in the studio for the first time, and you know, and if you've been out on the road for 6 months and you've used 12, 14, 16 with the ride here, and then suddenly you have 10, 12 and you're reading, suddenly the ride isn't where you think it is, you know, and so, yeah, there can be those little moments. So yeah, that can be a tricky one. I think it's better to stick to something as much as you can, you know.
Yeah. What age did you start drumming, and what bands or artists inspired you to begin with?
Right. I think I first saw my uncle play. He was a great drummer. I saw him play when I was 7, and then I was having lessons with him around that time. So, but then I came down to London for lessons until I was 16, from when I was 8 until I was 16. And at that time, I suppose I was listening to a lot of big band because my uncle was a big band drummer, basically. So he was playing me, you know, Count Basie with Sonny Payne. He played loads of Buddy Rich, of course. But then what the most important thing is my brother is 13 years older than me. So when I was sort of 5 or 6, he was like 18, 19, you know. So he was listening to Beatles, Stones, Beach Boys, Motown, you know, just incredible music. So I think I had probably about the best mix of music you could possibly have. Yeah, but you know, it's meant that I love a lot of different styles of music, and I love playing a lot of different styles of music. You know? But I always go back to those roots, really. Motown, Beatles, Stones, and just good singer-songwriters. You know, that's about it, really. Yeah.
And I find this is a very hard question. I actually wouldn't be able to give one answer to this. Do you have an all-time favorite drummer if you had to pick just one?
Yeah. I mean, like everybody, there are so many. I mean, it is almost impossible, I would say. But the one that that's always been there, and I come back to all the time, and I'm never ever disappointed. He's just always inspiring. Is Steve Gadd, of course. He's just, you know, it's just incredible what that guy's done for not just for drums but for music, you know, and in such a incredibly humble way. It's just, yeah.
Yeah.
That's how you should do it, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no denying that. um, so, possibly another tricky one here. What's the highlight of your career so far?
Oh, wow, that's hard. Um, yeah, I mean, there were quite a few when I was younger, actually. When I was, I mean, I got a chance to play at Ronnie Scott's for 2 weeks with Gil Evans, which was huge. I mean, most people probably won't know who Gil Evans is now, but he was Miles Davis' arranger for a few albums, and he's just an absolute musical giant, you know. And I was 22, I think, you know, and I just couldn't believe that I should even be allowed in the room with the guy, let alone be on stage with him for 2 weeks. You know, so there's so many little things like that. And then what's just sprung to mind is I did this gig for about 15, 16 years with a French singer called Veronique Sanson. And the bass player was Lee Sklar, who's a big inspiration for me. He's legendary, you know. And so that was always great. It was always me and him in that band. All those gigs were incredible, just sharing the stage with him. And I've been in the studio with him quite a lot. So those are really good. But I think playing with James Morrison is, yeah, I really like that, because he lets you play, you know. He wants you to be, he wants you to bring what you bring. In fact, I don't think I've ever in 11 years had him say to me anything like, "Oh, that's not the fill on the record," or, you know, yeah, or anything like that. You know, he just likes, he doesn't want it to sound like the record. He wants it to sound live when we play.
Mm.
So he's encouraging things to develop all the time, and things change, you know, on the gigs. The gigs are never the same twice in a row. It's incredible.
Mm.
You know, we have no click, no in-ears, no screens around the drums. It's incredible. It's a very musical situation, and yeah, so that's probably my favorite thing I've done, really, I think.
No, cool. And actually, that links me very nicely to another question. My next question is, when you first get a gig with a new artist, how do you learn the material? So do you notate it? Are you given the sheet music? Do you learn it by ear? But then with what you've just said, if you could then go on to say about if you didn't record the drums in the studio, let's say, but then you get a gig.
Yeah.
Does it matter if it's slightly different to the studio recording?
Well, yeah. I mean, starting with that's really, obviously that can change. I mean, I've been with people that are so, well, I don't know if picky is the right word, you know, because it sounds like they're in the wrong, you know, but I guess some people just want it the way they want it, you know, and you have to respect that. And if it gets to the point where it's not working out, then you just got to say, well, this isn't for me, you know. And then even with things like electronic sounds and things, you know, again, it depends on the situation. I think sometimes it's valid, sometimes it's not. I think some people jump on that bandwagon just because everybody else does it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I don't know if you noticed, for a long time there was a thing of the singer at the front of the stage would have a floor tom.
Yes.
Yeah, that kind of thing. You know, well, it's the same with anything. Suddenly, you'll find every drummer has an SPD pad or something with all the triggered sounds from the album. You know, and I think, well, yeah, it's kind of okay, but you can bet that that's a management thing most of the time, because management love it to sound like the record.
Yeah.
And but then you'll find, what I find is the people I really like generally, who are kind of really right at the top of their game, are not interested in that. You don't see Paul Simon doing something like that, or James Taylor, or, you know, anybody of that ilk. You know, it doesn't have to sound like the record. They just play, or the Rolling Stones wouldn't be triggering the snare drum sound from their last record. You know what I mean? It's crazy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've always thought, yeah. And actually, I don't really think, honestly, I don't think that most people in the audience care that it sounds like the record.
Yeah.
You know, most people aren't going to say, "Oh, the tambourine's missing on beat 4." What?
Yeah, they're not going to know.
Who cares? You know, there's somebody in that room that's kind of calling the shot and cracking the whip. That's going, "Oh, we need the tambourine on 4, and we need," and it can get a little out of hand. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I think it might be better just to give one of the singers a tambourine and you know, that kind of thing, and let the thing develop a little more organically. But that's got to come from the top, you know. That's what I mean. If you've got somebody like James who is willing to let that happen, then things can develop in a more natural way. Whereas if you've got somebody who's maybe, you know, constantly living within the bubble of the record, as soon as something's different, it might even be just an open hi-hat or something that you play that isn't on the record. And what was that? What was that? You know, it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And having come from the background I come from, it's just that can be hard to get used to, you know. Yeah.
And then when you first get the songs, how do you go about learning the material?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I must admit, I wish I didn't do this, but I find I have to do it all the time. I have to make and it does mean I learn the stuff quicker. I have to make a chart. It depends what it is. I mean, if there's only a couple of songs, like say you've got to play with somebody on a TV show or something, well, that's going to be easy. But if you've got to learn maybe 26 songs for a set, and you've got 2 weeks, well, I definitely will have a chart. It might not be well, again, you see, it depends. If somebody's very, very picky about the fills, and then I'm going to have to write those fills out, and I'm going to need to have those. Like maybe I don't have a music stand. I'm quite happy to just set it on the floor so you don't really see it, you know. And it's probably up here, but occasionally while playing, I can just let my eye glance down. You know, it's fine. Yeah. So yeah, I find it goes in quick that way. It goes into my memory a bit better when I write things out. Yeah. But then, you know, there is a point. Let's say you're doing that for a month tour or something, there's a point after maybe half a dozen shows where you feel you know the gig now. Yeah. There's that danger of of not putting the charts out, you know, like, oh my God, I'm going to do it tonight just without. Yeah. So what I try and do is have it there and a couple of the shows not look at it. But if I know it's there, you know, and it's like a drug. You like it, you know. It's like, no, I'm not going to have that second coffee or anything. You know, don't look at the chart. You know.
Yeah, I say that to students all the time when they've learned a song from a chart out or something, and then it gets to we have an annual student concert, and no sheet music is allowed. So
right. There you go.
Learning one song, and a lot of them are like the whole like, well, I've learned it from the music. I've now got to remember it, but it's that you do know it. You're just kind of using that as a bit of a comfort.
Yeah.
You know, just got to just kind of not look at it.
Also, there can be. I mean, I get this. If this is your gig, and you know, let's say you've got a month to learn a set, and you're going out to do a gig. Then that's your time to use to learn the music, you know. But it has changed a lot, because if you only had to learn the kind of basic structure of the song, and then you play your way, well, that's okay. That's one way. But if you have to remember all these absolute specific things within, like, you basically can't change from the recording at all, for instance. Well, then you're spending a lot of time. And if, you know, let's say I might be doing one gig like that. You know, let's say there's a gig coming up and I'm playing with somebody on a Saturday night. It's one gig and there's 25 tunes and they want it all exactly as the record. Well, the thing is that gig is not, I hate to be sort of monetarily driven, but if that gig is only paying X amount of money, well, it might take me a month to learn that music.
Yeah.
Well, if you said to management, are you going to pay me for my time learning that music? And they say no, well, then I have to say, well, I've got to have pieces of music on stage because I haven't got my own time to put aside, like 20 hours a week to learn your music for one gig. It can get a little crazy, It would be like expecting them to do the same for you. I want you to work for 20 hours a month for me for free. They would say absolutely not, but for some reason it's okay that you have to,
Yeah, and that I'm glad you said it like that, because it's very true.
And what I'm saying is what I came from is that never used to happen. It used to be you might have to learn the songs, but you wouldn't have to learn the actual micro notation of the drum fills,
Yeah. Okay, so my next one. Have you ever had anything go wrong on stage that you've had to recover from?
Yeah. Yeah. You mean sort of musically, like a mistake or something going wrong?
Mistake or a technical malfunction with your kit?
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I had there was a year when it was about a 12-month period, a whole year, where I wasn't doing James Morrison's gig, and so anyway, when I came back into the band to do a couple of gigs right at the end of one of the tours, obviously I had to come into the city because it was the last two or three gigs of a tour. It meant I was coming in to the situation as it was. In other words, there were quite a few clicks. There was an SPD pad. So I had to it wasn't doing it exactly as I'd been used to doing it. So a couple of the tunes, we had a click. And that was mainly because the SPD pad had sampled little sequences. So which started about halfway through the tune. So we had to be absolutely spot on with tempo. So the way it worked, what I'm getting to is the way it worked. There was a guy behind me who was running the clicks. So when James was ready, he'd do a little chat, and I'd kind of know that this was the time we'd start. So I would give the guy behind me a thumbs up, and he would start the click. And we did this 20 times in rehearsals and on the sound check for the gig. And then when it came to the gig, I gave him the thumbs up, and I had one ear in just for the click, and nothing happened. So I looked at him and gave him the thumbs up, and nothing happened again. I was, geez. And it happened twice, 2 gigs in a row, and I can't remember exactly what happened. I think the first one, it was a different pack, and I think there was a power switch underneath, and it had been knocked off. So the pack, my actual power pack, hadn't got any power going to it. And the second one was a malfunction somewhere in the chain. But twice in a row, that click didn't happen. So I just had to count the tune off. Yeah. And it worked fine. It was brilliant. And actually, it was those moments that spurred James into going, why are we doing it with all this kind of technology? Just get rid of all that and let's just go back and play how we used to.
Yeah.
Right. Because it becomes a little bit of a crutch. And also when that stuff goes down, it's horrendous. People it's kind of running around panicking. Stuff doesn't start. And the other thing I don't like about that side of things is you're always glued to the arrangement when you have loops and tracks running. Yeah. Pretty much always. So if James if he gets to the end of the tune, and we're going round and round on choruses, well, and then there's a stop. Well, we have to stop at that point. Well, he might want to keep going because the audience are going crazy at some big festival, but you can't because the the sequence is telling you what to do. The sequence is God, basically.
Yeah.
So that was really frustrating for the click to go down. The other major one that was it was just funny, really. I did I think it was 2013. I did the season of Strictly Come Dancing on TV because Brett Morgan was off doing something else, which I forgot. So I did that whole season. And then in January, they asked me to go and do the little tour, which was about a 3 or 4 week tour in January, right after Strictly finished. So anyway, it was, as you can imagine, January, some of the gigs were freezing cold. They were huge gigs, like I think it was in Nottingham, and it was a sort of skating ice rink sort of thing. So it was freezing in there. And the back doors were wide open behind me. And I had I was playing in a pea coat, shivering. And my teacup was under my music stand. And as we got to there was a first half and a second half. And as we got to the last tune in the first half, now there's like a half-hour break. I'm thinking, finally, I can go and get a nice warm cup of tea. So we play and we do the last hit. And I put my sticks down and grabbed my teacup, and I was off the drums riser. I was halfway down the stairs, and I heard the MD going, 1, 2, 3, and it's a big, big drum fill, and I was, oh my God, and I kind of legged it back to the kit. I managed to get my hand on the sticks together and kind of just smash. It was just horrendous. And all these faces in the band kind of just turned to look at me, and I was like, oh, gee. And thankfully they were all laughing and smiling. So that wasn't forgotten quickly.
What was you were thinking about the next cup of tea?
Because I was literally shaking like
you're cold like that. Yeah.
And basically I forgot the play out. There was a play out, like an 8-bar play out with a big drum fill at the beginning. Of course, every single gig after that was, will you be joining us tonight? Every gig, yeah. I'm sure that there can't be a living musician that has never done something similar to that. There can't.
When you said about getting off the drum riser, my one, just very, very quick, brief one of this. We were all walking on stage holding paraffin lanterns. I mean, there's the first mistake. And it was like...
Yeah, that sounds like a recipe for disaster, yeah.
It was pitch black, apart from the lanterns, and there was a track playing, and I had to do a counting at a certain time. And I went round the back of the kit with this paraffin lantern. Yeah. And the stage was, the drum riser was right up against this curtain, and I just assumed that there was a wall there. And I somehow managed to get my foot off it. I fell off the back of the stage while holding a paraffin lantern, and I managed to climb back up. The eight count starts in my ear. I'm trying to turn this lantern off. It won't go off, and I'm blowing it. And I managed to put it down and start, but then afterwards my knee was like swollen. And
oh my God! See, again, both our experiences, maybe not the getting off the drum riser one, but both our experiences were due to technical problems.
Yeah.
You were doing something you probably shouldn't. Yeah. And I was having to mess about with clicks that actually nobody in James and nobody in the band wanted anyway.
Quite, yeah.
We were just like, I can't believe this. Why is this going wrong? It's nothing to do with us. It's just some technical failure again, So, again, keep it old school, keep it real, walk on stage. I don't know if you see, there's some great Zeppelin footage. Well, and all the best bands do it. The Beatles went on stage. They didn't have any kind of introduction, the Zeppelin, Rolling Stones, they just walk out and play. Yeah. There's never any kind of hoopla, and I think that is one thing I don't really deal with very well, is the any sort of theatrical unnecessaries, something that gets in the way of the music. I think is I think the music has taken a second place in it.
I can see that, absolutely.
And everybody's more interested in the show, like the lights and which is fair enough, but But most people I like are generally, that doesn't happen. It's, you know, I remember when I went to see Van Morrison, when I was offered the gig, I went to see his gig, and the lights came on stage and they didn't change all night. There wasn't a light show.
All right.
They were on, you know, they were just on. And the band played a song and he walked on stage and did 90 minutes and then walked off. And I thought, oh my God, it was like, it was so pure, you know, and you don't find that now. I think what you tend to find now, even with the best intent in the world, most people can't escape it. There's always the name on stage behind them. There's the name on the bass drum head. There's a light show. There's a, you know, and people say, well, it has to be like that because it has to be a show, but it doesn't, because Van Morrison is selling out.
Yeah.
Just because he says he doesn't want to do it, well, that you don't find his gigs half full.
No.
You know?
No. That's very true.
Yeah, you know, if somebody like George Ezra or somebody said, hey, you know, I don't want to do a light show, let's just do it really pure, like very simple, you know, the gigs would still be full.
What are your hobbies away from drumming?
One that's it's a really big one for me is photography, but only a sort of certain part of it. And in a way, it's only in the last few years I've sort of thought about it, but I like similar styles of photography that I like in music. So I don't really like staged photography. You know, I mean, I can appreciate some of it just for the kind of expertise or the artistic merit, but I much prefer stuff that's done in the moment, you know, that's spontaneous and kind of maybe just a moment that was there and has gone, you know, and you can't can't reset it, you know. So, and I like to be like that in music too. I always like to, you know, in the studio, for instance, I always prefer, if I can, to get a take top to bottom. And people just don't work like that anymore. And I've had to re-educate myself a little bit. You know, often people will say something like, let's find a pattern for all the choruses. And then we'll just play all the choruses. Okay, now let's find the pattern that works in the verse. And then you play all the verses. It's really weird. You know? So yeah, photography. I wish I read more. I've always wished that I could read more, but I find my mind, unless it's something I really, I mean, there's a lot of books in here, and actually I have read quite a bit, but I wish I could read more. But photography, and I've got a lot of photography books that you know, it's very inspiring to me. A handful of guys, you know. And let's see what else. That's about it, really. I mean, I wouldn't say running is a hobby, but it's something I do, you know. But as regard to something that sits alongside music very nicely and is a good diversion, because in a way I think you need something to tick the same boxes. And really now it's now I'm not able to go and play at all. I mean, I was thinking about this. I was on holiday before all this broke. I was in California for 3 weeks, and I'd only played once or twice in January. Before that, January was very quiet. So in these months, I've probably spent about, I don't know, 8 hours behind the kit. Playing. I mean, I've been practicing a bit here, but actually working. And of course, now we're all in the same boat. But so I'm lucky that I've got something like photography that it's not so much a diversion, but it ticks some of the same boxes, you know. And I quite like that it's something that I'm not, I don't have to do financially. I haven't got to worry about whether somebody's going to like that, or I just do it for myself, you know. But actually, I did shoot all the pictures for one of James's tour brochures.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he had a few, you know, there's always got photographers hanging around, and they, you know, they'll be out front taking shots in front of the gig. and maybe doing more staged kind of poses, like, you know, in the street. But he, I was always just taking pictures backstage, and he said to me, "Oh, you know," he said, "never worry about taking pictures." He said, "Because I don't think he would ever know that I was taking a picture. You know, it was always very, not that I'm trying to be sneaky, but I was so quick, you know, just, and he wouldn't see it." Yeah. And anyway, in the end, they used them for the tour brochure, which was pretty cool. Yeah, it's great.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I'm the same. I'm always taking photos, and I like to try and, rather than pose it, you know, get my little boy to stand there and try and just.
That's exactly it.
I have my phone. I have my phone ready the whole time, and I do it on my phone. I really love photography, and I've had DSLR cameras, but I think having a child and going out somewhere and having that over your shoulder and trying to carry that around, it kind of didn't work. So I then got a much better phone with a much better camera, just so I could still.
Right, yeah. Phones, yeah. I mean, yeah. Obviously, I've taken some pictures that I really like with my phone, you know, and it's so quick.
Yeah.
And also for the kind of photography I like, people just don't even care. They don't even know you've taken a picture because everybody's doing it. Mm. Whereas if you are walking around with some huge camera, which I don't do, I've got this this little Leica, which is pretty small.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's I mean, it's pretty tiny, really. You know, it doesn't look like anything. And it actually, I had one guy say to me, I was walking around because I, you know, take my dog for a walk every day a few times, and I've just been carrying it on my shoulder, you know. And then one guy said to me, "Is that an antique?" Which is great, you know. And actually, I mean, the lens probably is. The lens is probably like 60 years old or something, but the camera's only about, I don't know, 5 years old or something. Mm. But I said to him, "Yeah, it is," because it means that people don't want to nick it, which is great. It looks like a piece of crap, you know. You can tell. I mean, I've taken this everywhere on tour for. I mean, it's in a right old state. But yeah, anyway, I'm glad I've got that because it allows. I think I do need something where I'm kind of in the moment and you can question yourself. You know, I quite like that. Not in like an adrenaline way, like jumping off a cliff into a river or something, you know, not that, but just something where you artistically can just put yourself in question a little bit. You know, if you're away on tour, it's quite a nice distraction, you know, like I'd be, you know, some of the guys don't want to hang out maybe, and you can just kind of wander. If you're in, let's say you're in, I don't know, Milan or somewhere, and you've got an afternoon that everybody's in bed or whatever, and you just think, oh, just wander around the street with the camera. Yeah. And, you know, laptop and doing a bit of editing. It's just a nice way to kill a few hours creatively. It's nice, you know.
Yeah. What sort of person do you think you need to be to successfully work in the music industry? So, you know, for example, like you, where you've worked with multiple artists.
Right. I think it's so multifaceted, obviously, you know, and obviously you could have a room of, you could pick 100 drummers, put them in a room, and you'll find every kind of personality amongst them. And weirdly, I think you'll find quite a lot of introverts, you know. I wouldn't say I'm particularly, but I think the public perception of a drummer is definitely not the introvert. It's the drummer is the extrovert, the animal, you know. But that doesn't necessarily need to be true. You know, I wouldn't say that somebody like Steve Gadd is an extrovert, or Jeff Porcaro, you know. You know, but they're not probably your typical perception of a drummer, you know. I think people tend to think of somebody like, you know, I don't know, just somebody in a thrash metal band being, you know, kind of sweating and, you know. But I think some of the, I read an interesting thing the other day, but a few weeks back, that I thought was really, really good. Because a lot of people say that one of the best things you can be is have humility and be open to, you know, what's happening on the bandstand, what's happening on the session, what's happening on stage. And but it was an Art Blakey book, And one of the guys in his band said, you know, it's good to be humble. And apparently Art Blakey said something like, nah, no, forget that. What you need is arrogance. And I think he's possibly right, you know. Not that, because obviously all this stuff manifests itself in many different ways. So, but I think you probably do need a sort of, maybe arrogance is probably not quite right, but it's it ends up being like a sort of conviction that you can do what you do.
Yeah, confidence in yourself.
Yeah, confidence, but there might be a slight arrogance that I think maybe it is too strong a word if it's taken at face value, but I think it's possibly in there. It's in the recipe, I think. You know,
and I think possibly if you're too arrogant, you'll get the calls because
well, not only that, but that being too arrogant would mean that you wouldn't, let's say, you wouldn't be prepared to bend your time feel a bit. You know, like let's say bass players playing a particular way, like really lazy behind the beat, and if you think that it's going to feel great if you do that, but you're too arrogant to do that because you just feel that, well, it's not going to work, you know. So you have to have this really open. I think it's quite an interesting psychological thing sometimes, because that you're dealing with the way that you're approaching music, the way that everybody's approaching music, and also, you know, what the producer is telling you, what the songwriter is telling you. You have to kind of sometimes decipher what they mean, because that, you know, it's not going to be black and white. Even something like a drum part that's handed to you. Often, what happens now is a drum part is very, very. I can't remember the last time I had a handwritten drum part. Most times, let's say you're on a film session. Well, all the parts for all the orchestra will be in the computer, because that will, maybe it's been put in there specifically for the guy to be able to hear the arrangement as a demo before he gets to the studio. So what happens is once he's got all that, he's played that in from the keyboard into the computer, he then just hits print. So your drum part that you're reading is what he's programmed into the, you know, so that's not going to be necessarily exactly what he wants you to play. So now you've got the psychological thing of having to get, well, does he want it exactly like that, or is that a suggestion? Or so sometimes it's best to be open and just say, I'll say to a producer or a arranger, do you want it exactly like that? And 9 times out of 10 they'll say kind of, but you know, it's open for interpretation. So yeah, it's many facets to the whole psychological makeup. I think being open to ideas, because at the end of the day you are a hired hand, so you've got to be open to people's suggestions, but you also, you know, I like to feel like I'm bringing. Oh, my dog's going to walk past. Come in.
Right.
Oh, he's not. He wants to stay there. All right. You want to come down? Anyway, you know, it's nice to also feel like maybe you've been called because you can do the job, and that there's that kind of confidence thing that hopefully, you know, you rely on your experience that you've built up over the years, that you can actually do the job. So, you know, yeah, it's tough, but I think you have to have. It's good if you could be everything, you know. But and then of course you have the thing of being able to get over maybe a possible bit of nerves and being a little, you know. Yeah, but you only have to look at all the great tennis players, or that everybody suffers with the same kind of thing, you know. You go in one day and it's all great. The next day you go in and it feels like you've never played before.
Probably the most important question of this interview right now. I said earlier I was going to come back to this. So
okay, right. I'll just going to push my sleeves up. This sounds important.
Yeah, it's really important one. So, what's your favourite biscuit?
Brilliant. Well, you know what I just had, so that might be a giveaway. Was a Jaffa cake.
Is that a biscuit though?
Oh,
Or
I
is it?
can't remember what the outcome was. I could consult my biscuit book.
You've got a biscuit book.
Oh, don't tell me I can't find it. This was bought. This was bought. Oh, I have got it. This was bought for me as a present because of my love of tea.
Nice cup of tea and sit down. Oh.
Yeah, and it's so I could actually look it up for you. So while we're chatting, I shall be looking that up.
There you go.
Yeah, because it has got. We laugh about that, but I bet there's hundreds of millions of pounds resting on that
Yeah, well, yeah.
in VAT and all that stuff. That's why the fight was apparently. It's the same with things like oil and anything that somebody can get out of a paying hundreds of millions of pounds for. Well, you would. I think that's why they. I'm going to guess. I'm not even going to look at the encyclopedia. I think they did say it was it was something to do with the VAT on. You have to pay VAT on cakes. I think.
Yeah, I seem to remember that.
Biscuits. I think it's that way round. I think.
Yeah.
And so they were trying. People. I think the powers that be were trying to say, well, this is a cake.
Yeah.
But they managed to say, whichever way around it is, it's like if you leave it out, if you leave that out, it goes hard. It doesn't go soggy. So whichever way around, they proved it and they won their case and saved hundreds of millions of pounds. So,
My next question.
A good question. It's a brilliant question. I didn't see that one coming at all.
And the next part to this question is normally, are you a dunker? Because I know you're into your tea, but I think that I can't really ask that about a Jaffa cake because who would dunk a Jaffa cake?
No, that's a bit brutal. I think a bit too.
Jaffa cake.
I think. Funnily enough, I think I tend to. If I had my little espresso there, Jaffa cake. But when I have my tea, I tend to have a rich tea biscuit.
Ah, right. So there we are.
Very plain, very plain. Not much sugar, no chocolate, nothing.
But would you dunk the rich tea?
No, not really. No, I like the crispiness of it.
You wash it down with the tea.
Very good, very good. I might have to put these links to underneath, so maybe I could get an endorsement with.
Yeah.
Who would it be? McVitie's or somebody?
Yeah, they make Jaffa cakes, don't they? Yeah.
I think they make rich tea as well.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
They are like the Gretsch of biscuit.
Whenever the next tour is, whatever, can't you put those on the rider?
Yeah, exactly. Stranger on the bass drum. That would be good.
Oh, yeah.
Gretsch.
Never mind saying James Morrison. It doesn't make that. It could be a picture of a Jaffa cake. It's perfect.
I like it. Yeah. Yeah, because the hole could be in the middle.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I might go back to putting the hole in the middle instead of off the side. Then it'll look like a Jaffa.
If I ever see that you've done that, I'll be phoning you up and saying, Neal, is that to do with our conversation?
20%. I'll have to give you 20% of all proceeds. That's great. Good one. Yeah, good question.
So my last question, if you could give one bit of advice to up and coming drummers, what would that be?
Yeah. Oh man, it's really hard. And again, like I said, I think very, very early on that I think the sooner you can realise what you want to be, what you want to say, the sooner you can realise that, the better. However, I think the best way of achieving that is to maybe absorb everything, even if it appears to be something that you don't really like early on. I mean, there's things now that I love that when I was a kid, I would have said, oh, you've got to be kidding. I'll never like that. Probably the same as food or something. There's probably food that you love now that when you were 10 years old, you probably would never have entertained, or whatever. So I think to be open to as much stuff as you can be, without kind of analyzing it too much, without sort of saying, "Oh, I hate that. That's terrible," or, kind of find out why somebody likes it, or if you like, obviously, if you like a certain drummer, figure out what he likes, and then it's the same with, like for instance, somebody like Bob Dylan. When I was younger, it's not really something I was into, and then you realise, well, yeah, but if I was a singer-songwriter, Bob Dylan would probably be the first person I would listen to. So then you realise the Beatles were massive Bob Dylan fans. So it makes you think, yeah, he's probably pretty good. So over the years, you find, oh, actually, I like that song. Oh, I like that one. Oh, I'll get that album. Oh, I love that album. And before you know it, you've got like 8 Bob Dylan albums that you love,
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Just be open to stuff. And then once you start to discard later, then that's when you start to hopefully form a bit of a voice that nobody can do everything, so you have to kind of find something that moves you as a musician, and hopefully try and steer your sound and your playing towards making that kind of sound, so yeah, and obviously the thing is such a big process. It's such a gradual process. It's a daily thing, isn't it? It's not even it's obviously it's yearly, and you never ever stop. But yeah, I mean, even when I listen back to, I watch interviews with, like the thing I watched a couple of nights ago was Rolling Stones in Cuba. And I mean, Cuba's never had a gig like that, ever. And Keith Richards and Mick Jagger were playing through Honky Tonk Woman. But he played it as he originally conceived it, and it sounded like a Hank Williams country song.
Oh, right.
It was absolutely beautiful. It was fantastic. But it wasn't the Rolling Stones, so you could see how they brought it into what they do, but there's all these really influences that are not particularly obvious, but they've obviously listened to a lot of different stuff. I mean, I was reading about Miles Davis. He loved, Ravel and Stravinsky, and, yeah, you know what I mean? So I think if you like somebody's playing, you generally should be finding out what makes them tick.
Yeah, it's great. It's good advice.
Yeah, and just try and stay inspired. That's a big one. Try and stay. It's hard sometimes, especially now. I mean, geez, I'm always saying, get out of your house, get out of your bedroom. Don't be a bedroom drummer. Go and play. I mean, and that's one thing we cannot do. So, that would be the first thing I would say. But of course, we can't now. So it's very hard, but I think you have to work on it like anything else. You've got to stay inspired, even if it just means, I haven't been particularly inspired the last month or so, but I've been trying to just keep the engine oiled and just work on a few things, but most importantly, just listening to all this,
So Neal, thank you so much for spending your time with us here at DrumWise today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. All the best and stay safe.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tom. Yeah, pleasure talking to you, and nice work on. I think you're doing a great job spreading the word like you are. I mean, it's great, and yeah, keep it up.